Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Tanmay Singh. I am the co-founder of Faith Career, a boutique career management consulting firm. We specialize in helping aspirants to study abroad and in India at highly ranked institutions. If you wish to either study abroad or in India, please comment below, reach out to us via Instagram or WhatsApp, and we would be very glad to help you. Today, we would be talking to Jegyasa Gupta. Jegyasa has received an offer letter from IESE, which is a premier business school in Spain and currently ranked third in the world as per Financial Times, to pursue the MBA program, the full-time MBA program that starts in September this year. Jegyasa, if I'm not wrong, you also received a scholarship, didn't you?
I did,
You did.
30,000 euros.
Awesome, awesome. That's a wonderful amount. And of course, she has kindly agreed to share her experience, advice, and more. Let's find out. Okay. Hi, Jegyasa. Thank
Hi,
you.
Tanmay.
Thank you once again for taking your time to talk to all of us. I definitely appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. And therefore, to begin with, could you please give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Right. Sure. So I think I'll start with how it flows. I did my undergrad from Shahid Bhagat Singh College, Delhi University, and I have a bachelor's in commerce. I did my undergrad back in 2018, so it's been a couple of years now. Post which, I went on to work in a family business, my cousin's business for a year. And I quickly realized that that's not something that I particularly enjoyed at that point. But I really enjoyed the flexibility at the point of that because I was trying to explore different facets of, the career and job world that has to offer. Post which, because I had a bachelor's in commerce and I was very numerically inclined, I actually found myself an opportunity at NatWest Group, the erstwhile Royal Bank of Scotland. And I used to work there as a risk associate. I did that for close to 3 years. I used to work there in the capacity of a regulatory risk associate, which essentially translated to doing a lot of statutory reporting on credit risk and market risk. And I did that, like I said, for 3 years, and that was interesting. And also towards the end of my stint there, I realized two things. One, I disliked mundane, boring jobs, which were same month in and out, because it was a very quarterly and result driven sort of a work. You were putting the same kind of numbers, you were doing number crunching of a similar kind throughout the year. The second thing I realized, I was actually pretty good at ad hoc projects, which required me to sort of apply my, my brain, which required me to sort of communicate with a lot of other people. So I started looking for another opportunity, which was more in tune with my second finding, which is when I actually landed my job with Grant Thornton.
Right.
And I work in the capacity of a consultant. And I have for the last 2 years. I work with the management consulting team here, and we predominantly only deal with financial services industry, which means over the course of my career, last 5 years, I have been someone who has worked only and only in financial services industry. So I think I understand the ins and outs of the space quite well now.
Right.
And in terms of what led me to my consulting jobs, I think there were two things. One was I did 2 undergrad internships. Both of them were with 2 big consulting firms. One of them was with McKinsey, the other one was with Deloitte. And both the times I was working predominantly, building and driving efficiency in some or the other capacity. So the second finding from my NatWest stint was not something that was particularly new to me, but it sort of reaffirmed that, that was something that I was good at, and that is something that I should professionally do. So this is what I've done over the course of last 5 years, in addition to all of these things, because, I feel that you should be a student at all points in time in your career.
Yeah.
I did 2 courses. I did one course before the start of my professional stints. I did a course on Asia Pacific business expansion, which is largely a strategy course, a strategy application course with Singapore Management University in the summer of 2018. And the second course, I actually did a 6-month long certification with INSEAD. And the certification that I did at INSEAD was largely, again, it was like a mini MBA in a lot of different senses that, I learned a lot about marketing. I learned a lot about operations. I learned about design thinking, all of these domains that either I don't have a, point of reference to because of the work that I've done over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Two, I have some understanding, but like I would love to sort of jump deeper into them over the course of my MBA as well. Just so for example, we have design thinking. Design thinking is something that's very important in the coming years. So, yeah, and this course was something, it's basically a certificate course in strategic management and business essentials, which is largely, it prepares you to sort of deal with various facets of business. So yeah, I did that for the last 6 months while I was doing my MBA applications.
Good.
So I think that was interesting. That was quite a pull and push at a lot of times because both of these things are very intensive.
Definitely.
But I think I feel quite better prepared now going into the process for my MBA because the course that I did was actually case driven. And the school that I'm going to, IESE, is also through and through a case driven MBA.
Yes.
So I think case like case or teaching, case curriculum of studying is something that takes slight getting used to. It's not very intuitive right off the bat because we're taught we're taught sort of how to read from the book and apply and all of that because that's something that we've done. So I think that's another way that this course has really helped me.
Right.
And it's going to help me in the coming months.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Now, since we are talking about your MBA here, right? And, if I'm not wrong, IESE Spain is like the sister school of Harvard. I do remember reading it somewhere, right? So then, let's talk a little bit more about that. So let me phrase my question this way. A lot of people tend to pursue an MBA only once in their life. What is it that motivated you to pursue yours? I mean, were there some trigger points? Was there some overarching motivation that led you to this decision?
Yeah, so there are a few. I mean, MBA primarily, there were few, and then higher education as a concept is different. So I think I'll start with the latter first. Why have I always wanted a higher education degree? I have two intentions. One, I wanted to sort of move abroad for a couple of years because I've always studied in an Indian context. So I feel like people, who only study in a certain geography tend to have a very, I don't want to call it myopic, but, we tend to develop some sort of horse blinders and we tend to not learn over and above what is in front of us.
Right.
So one intention with a higher educational degree was that. The second, of course, I think now more than ever, I understand that despite everything that's said, there's certain amount of prestige that employers in general hold people to, who have who have master's degrees as opposed to just having a bachelor's degree. So that is master's, mota for master's.
Right.
Specifically for an MBA, I think there were a few reasons because I've I've worked in a corporate for the last 5 years. At some point over the course of last year, I started to feel, slightly overlooked in terms of the opportunities that were there,
Yeah.
because my peers who had an MBA sort of either they got those responsibilities, roles, preferences in from my managers. And when I did have a conversation with my managers, uh, they did not have a very strong answer as to why they could not give me, because I work as a consultant even right now. Most how consulting works is that you share profiles with your clients, and clients tend to pick the set of people that they want to work with.
Right.
So I sometimes felt that the clients that I wanted to work with did not pick me because of that, because I did not have an MBA, because my peers who did get picked had an MBA.
Hmm.
One was definitely that. Second, I think I touched upon earlier. I
Hmm.
think, which is something that I've tried to do with everything, all the other educational degrees that I've done.
Yeah.
I want to learn about other disciplines in depth.
Hmm.
Um, and specifically in the case of an MBA, I think I understand this more than ever, is the fact that, like, as a professional, you can't have a myopic view to problems. You need to have a very, very uh comprehensive, a very, very multilateral view as to how you could look at a problem. And
Right.
I think unless and until you educate yourself about those, that's not possible, no matter how much you read. I think some classroom learning is very essential for that. So that was my second reason for an MBA. And I think the third reason ties in a lot with the second reason, is I wanted a broader context and business understanding, which is why case driven MBA programs was something that I was really looking forward to, because when you do study in a case driven MBA program, you sort of get to see what kind of various business problems are there and what kind of an approach has professionals taken to sort of solve that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So these three were my broad intentions and motivations behind an MBA. And I think I want to say it sounds slightly fabricated and sugar coated when I say this,
Hmm.
that your net worth is your network. I
Right.
think I understand this now more than ever, because I'm trying to sort of see what kind of opportunities lie for me. And like the biggest tool that most people have is their network
Hmm.
in today's time. And going to a B school and going to a prestigious B school, I think really opens a lot of the doors that remain closed, because you don't know the right people. You get to know the right people.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So these were largely my motivations for the MBA.
Good, good, good. Yeah, I have, quite taken to you. So several years ago, when I embarked on my own journey, I realized that I was aware of the statement that you recently spoke like a while ago, that your your network is a net worth, right? It's kind of a tongue twister as well. But the thing is that here, but as you said that, now that I have gained and like I've received an offer letter from a prestigious business school is when I'm starting to understand it at a much deeper level, right?
Yep.
Good. That's a very good point here. And I'm sure that our viewers would also now understand the importance of good education, good quality education, and what it one of the things that it can get for you is a very strong and robust network which supports you when you require it to, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. So then, since we have been talking about IESE here, could you please brief our viewers about the application process for the IESE MBA program?
Right. So the IESE MBA program is slightly different from your general, most of the other MBA programs that are there abroad. I think the first part is similar in the sense that, much like all the other programs, there are essay questions. You have to get your LORs, you have to have your CV.
Mhm.
That is the same. But the second thing that the school sort of really focuses on is finding the right fit as people, not just as professionals, which is where the concept of something called as an assessment day sort of comes in, where school essentially, they gather all the people that they do want to maybe extend offer letters to, and they get them together in a room, and very similar to a group discussion format that is there in the Indian B schools. They have something called as a group discussion, in the sense that we're given a case beforehand about a week before the assessment day, and you're supposed to spend a couple of hours trying to understand that case study. And when you are in that group, you're supposed to be discussing that specific case study, and there are a few prompts that are given with the case study. So when this group discussion is happening, usually there's one person from the admissions team who is managing your specific group. They are also someone who might or might not have feedback. I think they do have a great amount of feedback to give, which
Right.
is how they assess it. uh and then once this is done, I think in tandem with this, they also have an interview. But I want to point out very specifically that it you might, like, as someone who's applying to the school, a person might or might not get an assessment day invite. It's not something that the school invites everyone to. Some people only have, they submit their application and then they have an interview, like most MBA programs.
Right.
So that's necessarily not a disqualifier. From what I've been told, the two reasons why school sort of invites people to assessment day, for one is that either they're scholarship candidates, either it's that, or the other is they're trying to understand some facets of your personality that they've not been able to sort of gauge only via your application. So people tend to fall in both of those categories. So I would say that getting an assessment day invite is never a qualifier or a disqualifier in that sense.
Right. Right.
So yeah, and then you have your personal interview. I think personal interview is something that's common across the board.
Mhm.
And then I think in about a month's time, you have your final result.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Right.
that's it.
And
So the
sorry,
sorry, yeah. No, I was saying, so the whole process usually takes somewhere from uh about 2 months, 2.5 months to 2 months ke beech mein, I think,
Right.
from start to finish.
Right, right, right. And so since we just recently talked about your interviews, right? How did you prepare for the interview after submitting the application? Like, were there some specific steps that you took to prepare yourself?
Yeah. I think I'll take slight liberty, to tweak the question that you've asked me,
Sure, sure.
because I think people will benefit from that. My preparation, even for the interview itself, was not something that happened only after I got the invite. Uh, what I mean by that is I made a very specific effort, right? uh, Say from April or May, of the application, like before, when I was applying, like 4 5 months before I had started to apply, to sort of reach out and speak to the right people who have recently had an admit, to gauge a couple of things. One, if there is a commonality between the people that the school admits,
Mhm.
in terms of, not just in terms of numbers, but also in terms of the kind of people that they are.
Mhm.
Second, um, second thing that I sort of tried to gauge with my conversation was, were there some specific values that shined through and through, uh, you know, through the interview process,
Mhm.
after, like, so, on speaking with these people.
Mhm.
And what this exercise did for me was, one, it showed my commitment to the school.
Mhm.
Two, it also sort of showed whether or not I was the right fit for the school. Because there are situations that the school might be a great school, but if your values don't match, you'll be miserable throughout your program.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so that's how my exercise for, even for the interview prep, sort of started much before. And in terms of what I did essentially after getting the invite entailed a couple of things. One, I tapped into the network that I'd spoken to, got a sense of the kind of interviews that they had. Two, I actually sort of requested two sets of people to help me with my interview prep. One was I reached out to the alums, specific alums that were recommended by the admission committee. I had reached out to the admission committee asking to find me a fit in terms of my profile. I reached out to that specific alum who was kind enough not only to sort of conduct a session with me and a few others as to explain to us how the uh, how the interviews go on, but also explain to us what is it that the school tends to not like about candidates. So she really knew.
Right.
And so that was super helpful. The second person, I had reached out to one of the admission consultants that one of my friends had recommended. I did one or two sets of interview prep with them just to fine tune my effort and see, where was it that I was faltering, specifically with interviews. So from a very clinical sense, I think I got a great feedback from both of from the second, working with a consultant, with an admission consultant there. He told me that where I was faltering, where I was fumbling, what was it, how could you maybe, contextualize your thoughts if you're thinking a certain way, and what kind of interviews you could have. While a lot of this information is available on the internet, I think the human intervention is very helpful when you're trying to gauge whether you're speaking too many filler words or like I am saying right now, whether
Right.
whether you have the format right.
Hmm.
So that's where I think that was super helpful. But in terms of context, I would say speaking to the alums and doing a mock or two interview with them if they have the time, and if you're able to strike that sort of a connection with them,
Yeah.
is something that I would highly recommend.
Yeah.
Not just for ESA, but just generally for all the business schools.
Right. Got it. Got it. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Now, and now since we're talking about interviews, do you by any chance remember the questions that were asked you during the interview? If you can tell our viewers about that, it'll be great as well. Any few questions that you remember that
Sure.
at the top of
Yeah.
your head?
So my my interview was slightly different from the norm in the sense that most of the interviews that happen at ESA happen with admissions committee. Most of them. But my interview actually happened with an alum. I was under an assumption that because it's an alum interview, it's going to be chiller.
Yeah.
It was conversational, but I will not say that it was particularly very chill.
Hmm.
It almost felt like a stress interview that happens with admissions committee.
Hmm.
Uh, in terms of the questions that I was asked, my interview went on for an hour and 10 minutes, I think, that particular evening. And
Hmm.
the alum was kind enough to sort of delay my interview by 10 days because I'd fallen really sick.
Oh,
So I think he must have been slightly annoyed because I pushed it until the very last day.
yeah. Yeah.
It could have been that, but he was great. So my questions, few run-of-the-mill general questions. Give me a sense of what have you done in your professional career so far? Why have you made those choices? Then I categorically remember being asked about what are my strengths and my weaknesses. The third question, which I think is something that ESA tends to really focus on, even when you're interacting with their admissions committee outside of the interview context, is they want to understand your fit.
Hmm.
And that was something that my alumni interviewer really focused on. He kept trying to understand from me why was it specifically ESA that I wanted to go to.
Hmm.
So anyone who's preparing for ESA interview should have like a very strong reason which would convince the admissions team why it's ESA, or
Yeah.
like why ESA very specifically, because ESA as a school is very, very community driven.
Mhm.
And everyone that they bring to the community, they want to be sure that that person is going to be an asset to the community.
Mhm.
So that way, like I said, there was a lot of focus on the fitment. Then the part where I talk about the stress interview portion was I was asked a lot of behavioral and situational questions. I was asked, tell me about a time when everyone disagreed with you and you had to take a professional decision anyway. Then I remember being asked a question about the time you had to convince you know your team when they weren't seeing your way. Then I remember being asked a question about, I think, a question about how do I deal with failures? How do I deal with success? So I
Yeah.
think more than who you are as a professional, ESA during the personal interview, at least my experience tells me that that trying to gauge what kind of a person you are.
Mhm.
So I think taking your best, like your A game to that
Yeah.
interview is something that's very, very important. And I think what is really essential is not just knowing what you've written in your essays, but also knowing like down to the detail what is it that you've mentioned in your CV. Because while this did not happen with me specifically, I've had a lot of time. I got my admit almost 6 months ago, so I've
Yeah.
had a lot of time to speak with my peers, and a lot of them actually told me that admissions committee sort of picked quite a few details from the CV, and they went at it during their interviews. So while the interviews are very conversational and everyone is super nice in the admissions team, I would say that knowing everything that you send to them in great detail is something that's super important.
Mm-hmm. Got it, got it. I think in general, one of the things that I also recommend my own students is that after you have submitted your application, like the written elements of your application, please do not forget that they are also a part of your entire application, which means that while
Yeah,
you're essentially preparing for your interview, understand how is it, I mean, understand a few key elements such as understanding of fit, which is exactly what you said for EASE as well, right?
yeah,
Understand how is it that your value system aligns with that of the school's value system, right? What is it that
yeah,
they see and is it the same that you also believe in, right? And of course, understanding why is it that you require an MBA, because it is an expensive degree, both from the time and resources point of view,
absolutely.
right? So,
100%.
yeah, so I think reading whatever you have submitted is very important, like revisiting it and trying to analyze it, preferably with human intervention, as you said, right? That is also something that's always beneficial. Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Now, needless to say, since the IESC MBA program is very highly ranked, it is also very competitive, right? And you mentioned in your previous response that it is a school which is very community driven, which is exactly why they focus on the value system of everyone that they bring together, right? Now, keeping that in mind, according to you, what is it that helped you gain an edge over others or helped you stand out? In other words, what do you think were your differentiators?
Uh, right. I think I'm going to go back to something that I'd mentioned previously. Two differentiators. One was a process differentiator. The second was a personal differentiator, of course. I'm not going to not talk about that. But I think the process prep differentiator is something that some everyone can really take a lot of help from.
Yeah.
Don't start your process the year you have to apply, which is something that helped me stand out. So for context, what I'm trying to say with this is I applied to B school in 2023. Realistically speaking, this is a process which started a long time ago for me. But specifically for an MBA, I actually started putting together a diary. I don't have it handy, but it was a big fat diary that I have. in which basically I think I spent close to a month sometime in the May or the June of 2022, making a note of all the and qualities and all sorts of quirks, if I might put them as that, that schools tend to appreciate about candidates that they admit. And I think I spent a good month trying to gauge what were those 10-15 things that schools really like. And once I had that list together, what I essentially did over the course of a year and a half post that, and I continued to do that until I want to say the October of 2023, I kept making notes about my own experiences in that diary, which fit those boxes. And then there were a couple of filler pages which were just talking about different experiences, different um, you know, memories that I could sort of think of over throughout my life, in fact. And I basically I had a prepared mind map in front of me when I started to write my applications, which is why the only part of the process where I actually worked with someone to help me was my interview process. I had a mind map when I started my process. So that really helped me. Like, so why I recommend everyone to do this is because once you have that list down and once you have like those 10-15 instances that fit a specific quality, what you can do with that is depending on the school that you're applying to and depending on the qualities that they look for, you already have a list in front of you. I I think something that most applicants struggle with is this, like they're not able to come up with the right examples.
Yes.
And I think this was one really big differentiator that set me apart from a lot of the other folks, who were working on applications. The second thing, and slightly more personal, I think you can't really do too much about that, was my very focused professional journey, in the sense that I have I mean, not to take away from my entire prep, but a big part of why the ESA door sort of opened up to me was also because I'd worked with big solid names throughout my career. So, with the exception of course, my family business, I'd worked with companies like McKinsey, Deloitte. I'd worked with NatWest Group. I'm working with Grant Thornton right now as we speak. So I think this was something, that allowed the business schools to sort of take me slightly more seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to believe that the process is very holistic. I really do. I really want to believe it with all my heart. But there are some overarching themes that I see in the successful candidates around me. A lot of the peers that I'm going to be school with right now are people who have worked with MBBs already. So I think that was helpful. That was a differentiator, of course. But the other differentiator, of course, was the consistency in the kind of values that are also imbibed while working on the projects that I've worked through my professional journey. And I think if anyone gets to read my essays, they'll realize that there are specific value, like I talk about a value system in all of my essays. And that's very reflective in my journey. So having that consistency across your professional journey, which I had, was something that was incredibly helpful according to me. So yeah. But I
Right.
think being super prepared is something that I think they tend to make a lot of fun of people who have type A personalities. And
Yeah.
I have that. So I get, in my peer group, I get made fun a lot of because of this. But I've never seen anyone who's really prepared come out with like disappointing outcomes in life.
Yeah.
So being as prepared, over prepared, if I want to put it as that, people should do that. And I think they'll come out with fabulous results.
Yeah. I think I'll quickly add to that, which is that working harder doesn't hurt, right? It is only going to help you at some point in some form or the other, right? Maybe in the applications process, like while you're working on the written part of your applications, or in your live and or recorded interviews, or in this case, assessment days, right?
Absolutely.
All of that kind of, in my opinion, it has a cumulative effect, right? So it kind of accumulates, it adds up, and then you essentially imbibe all of that. And then when it comes to expressing that, either on paper or while speaking, you are able to effortlessly do it, seamlessly do it, right?
Absolutely.
Always helps. Awesome. Great. Now, let's try to conclude our conversation. Now, when it comes to, sharing your own advice or sharing your own tips, suggestions, what is it that you would want IESA MBA aspirants to do? Like, are there some do's and don'ts that you would want to highlight?
Definitely. Not too many, but a few, of course. One, like I'd mentioned, the school stresses heavily on community. So try to be part of the community even before you get an offer letter. What I mean by that is try and network not just with the admissions committee, but with alums for two reasons. One, they'll give you insight that's not available on the internet because uh, ESA as a school is, I want to say, slightly new to the Indian demographic.
Yeah.
So you will not find a lot of nuanced advice as you would find it for a lot of the American B schools.
Yeah.
So make an effort to speak with people. Second would be make an effort to attend the pre-admission events, because you do get noticed. And I speak this with experience because the Indian admissions so basically ESA admissions team is divided into regions, in the sense that you have a designated individual who you sort of communicate with at all points in time during the process. So my admissions in charge from India, by the time I think I had applied or I was about to apply, I'd spoken to her on 4 different instances. She recognized me by name, she recognized my face. So that was incredibly helpful, because when you do that, you develop a recall memory in, when your application sort of goes in front of that person. I think third, I don't know if you as a professional you would recommend that or not, but I really believe in it.
Hmm.
Outside of, if you're working with a consultant, great. You should always, if you should get as much help as you can. I think outside of getting help from there, you should always speak with alums.
Yeah.
If possible, get your essays reviewed by them. I say this because uh personally, I I was kind enough to sort of get help from one of the alumni. She was so kind. Not only did she help me with my interview prep, but she actually had made an effort even before I got an interview invite to review my essays. And the insight that I got from her was fabulous. I think the only reason why I got the scholarship that I eventually got
Hmm.
was because of the changes that she had suggested that I make.
Hmm.
Her help was monumental in the outcome of my application. So I like super like, if there is something that I would stress on, I would stress on that.
Hmm.
Ask the right people for help.
Right.
So alumni will be, they will be those people who will do it. And especially in a school like ESA, because it's such a community driven school, I think even before my admission happened, I spoke to close to 20 people.
Good.
Uh,
Hmm.
and I did not get a single no. Everyone was willing to have a chat with you, everyone was willing to help.
Hmm.
So it's about striking that connection with people. So people should do that. I think the second, so these were the do's.
Right.
Don'ts would be, I recently sort of experienced this with someone. Someone had reached out to me, trying to get a sense of what happens on an assessment day and all of that, yada yada. Um, I think they got complacent because they'd received an assessment day invite.
Yeah.
Eventually, they did not end up getting an admission letter from the school.
Mm.
Because I mean, I remember speaking with this individual, and we had, I think, close to 2 hours long conversation.
Wow.
And this so she I think at some point in her conversation she was very specific about, oh, I have such a great profile, and I know ESA would be lucky to have me and all of that. And while I'm sure that would have been the case, I think she got quite complacent in her approach, and I don't know if she prepared for her assessment day or not.
Mm. Mm.
So I would say don't get complacent if you do get the interview invite, and like be your humble self.
Mm.
Because I think admissions committee and interviewers are all of these people who have done this process for a very long time. They're able to, they're able to sense shit from a mile away.
Yeah.
So that's that. And I think the second, it seems a bit silly when I say this because I know people who did that. Uh, just because it's a small application in comparison to the other European business schools, because European business schools tend to have a very exhaustive application.
Yes. Yes.
Don't put your essays for, for later, saying, okay, cool, it's a chota application, I'll do it later. Don't do that.
Right.
Because honestly speaking, I sent in my 11th draft to ESA,
Mm.
and while I'd reused some parts of, from other applications, which if I had to do net exercise, the application that finally went into ESA was
Mhm.
technically my 20th draft of the same sort of a write-up. So
Right.
what I'm trying to say is that even if it's a small application, I don't think people should get, complacent and cocky ki cool. I'll do it later.
Mm.
Start it as soon as possible.
Mm. Mhm.
So yeah, I think these would be my don'ts. Like, don't delay it at all.
Don't. There is one more thing that I would very quickly highlight, which is that, like a short while ago, we talked about, interacting with alumni and students, right? Especially alumni, because they usually have relatively more time, right?
Yeah.
I So when I work with my own students, I always recommend them that they do it simply because it helps them get quote unquote a flavor of the business school, so to say, right? They're able to understand the culture of the school, what the school values, how is it that the MBA classroom and the MBA cohort functions. For example, in case of IASE, they usually are very community driven, as you said, right?
Yep.
I also know that Duke Fuqua is another school where they're very tightly knit, right? And
Yep.
same case with Tuck as well, Dartmouth Tuck, right? So
Yep.
I feel that it is definitely very important to talk to alumni and students. And I also like being an admissions coach. It's been 8.5 years now. I also feel the same. So we both are on the same side when we said that, yes, please do reach out to admission committees, of course, for a pre-application meeting if possible, and also definitely to students and alumni because they would be able to, they are currently in your shoes or they have been in your shoes, right? And they would be able to kind of give you a gist of what the school likes or stands for. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. Great, great. Now, needless to say, thank you once again, Jegyasa, for this. I definitely appreciate your time, your efforts, and all the tips and strategies that you shared with our viewers today. I wish you all the very best for your upcoming MBA journey. It is going to be challenging, of course. It should be that way. But at the same time, I think with a school such as IASE would also be supportive, right? Because
100%.
community that they would
Yeah, yeah.
put you into.
I already feel that. I mean, the kind of resources that we already have at our disposal. Uh, we have an India Business Club, which is trying their best to sort of get the Indian student pre-orientation in order.
Good.
And it's great. I mean, the school, I mean, no shade to other schools, definitely on this, but I've I had admits from other European schools as well, and big schools, I'm
Yeah.
going to say.
Mhm.
I did not like the community one bit. And a big reason why I rejected a lot of two of them largely was because purely because of the fact that I didn't like the community. So I would say in an MBA program, for me personally,
Mhm.
like going to a school which has excellent, fabulous, nice people is just so important
Yeah.
that I'm already, there were, of course, you always you think about the choices that you don't end up making,
You're
right?
not taken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were moments, where I had that doubt. I was like, oh, did I do the right thing? Whether or not I could have gone to that school, this and that.
Yeah.
But in those moments, when I see the support that we have from the community here, it's so nice. Like it's just so heartwarming. So yeah, it's superb.
Awesome, awesome. I have a feeling that, so I do know people. Actually, I had a discovery call with someone way back in January this year. And from that 90 to 100-minute discussion, I could make out that that individual was someone who would thrive in a very competitive environment. Okay. And on the other hand, there are individuals who are happy to be in a collaborative environment. Right. So I think it is, and this ties back to what you and I were discussing a while ago, that it is very important to establish of a fit, which means that you should try to understand if XYZ business school ties in with my own value system, right? Uh,
100%.
is it is it a place where I see myself thriving? It doesn't matter if the program is of 1 year or 2 years. What really matters is if during that time you would be happy, right? Would you
100%.
flourish? Yeah.
I think I would make a slight correction to what you've said. Just one tiny correction.
Mhm.
Most prestigious B schools that you'll go to, people are very, very competitive. Like I know even within the cohort right now, I know who's going to be my competition, and I am someone who gets really pushed by seeing someone do better than me.
Yeah.
Like, acha, how can they be better than me? I'm not to say that, that I have a complex,
Yeah.
but to sort of say that when I see someone who's doing better than me, I am pushed to at least reach that mark. And I think most schools, good B schools are like that, but what really differentiates is how do people operate outside of that. So
Yeah.
specifically with ESA,
Mhm.
even though people are competing for the same jobs, I've been told this repeatedly by alums, you'll
Mhm.
never find people giving each other the wrong advice.
Mhm.
Like, because I see this in competition a lot, people tend to feed other people with the wrong
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
That's not something that happens in schools which are very community driven. Like in the case of Tuck, I remember speaking with someone from Tuck who told me that because it's such a community driven school, people, specifically in consulting, people who are sitting for the same opportunities, they tend to help each other not just with case prep, but also when the interviewers are same, they have a similar template. So
Hmm.
they tend to help each other with those questions and the idiosyncrasies of the interviewer.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like that way, a collaborative B school, a collaborative environment is something that has all my love and affection.
Yeah, I would just very quickly mention that I do understand that regardless of the school you go to, you would have a lot of competition, right? What I
Yeah,
meant that, as you said, that beyond that classroom,
yeah,
beyond that competitive space, how is it that people are interacting with you? Like, are they being
100%.
hostile or are they being friendly, right?
100%. I mean, no, of course, I completely agree. There are people who only thrive in an environment which are through and through just competitive, very toxic. I
Hmm.
mean, I know I used to be one of those people. So,
Okay.
so I mean, I know how that operates as well. So, but yeah, I mean, on the other side, definitely for sure. I think I agree with everything that you're saying.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much once again, Jegyasa. I truly appreciate your time and everything that you shared with our viewers today. I wish you all the best for your
Thank you, Tanmay. Thank you so much.